Hi, I'm Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Christy, and we work with Globe International.
Working with missionaries, we hear stories of the struggles, the humor, God's goodness, and a little side of crazy.
Hey, that's who we are.
This is Crazy Missionary Stories.
Hello and welcome back to Crazy Missionary Stories. Today we are talking with Judy Hernandez and Chiqui. Judy has been serving on the mission field for 49 years, and Chiqui has pretty much grown up on the mission field. So we're going to chat with them today about what they're doing. Will you guys tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing in Guatemala?
Yes. Well, 44 years ago, God is always giving us surprises. We started a Christian school. This happened after actually we had been on the field with my husband and my 5 kids already for 6 years. And there was an accident in Mexico, my husband returning from a mission conference here at Globe, and God took him away. And there I was in Guatemala, San Juan Azuncalco, with my 5 little kids, and Bob Bishop said to me, "Well, Judy, what does God want you to do?" And I had already started a small kindergarten and feeding program for undernourished children in our village, because at that time it was a village. Now it's a metropolis. It's a huge city. And so that's where God spoke to me about opening. There was not a Christian school in our area of Guatemala at the time, and we started the first Christian school, Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end.
Yes, I love that. Will you tell us a little bit about the school today? What ages is it?
Well, yeah, what can I say? God has blessed us so amazingly, largely. We, little by little, we built. God had provided us with where we were living. We were able to buy the piece of land and the house, and they had outbuildings in the back of it. And that's actually where we started our first little classrooms with few children. We had to have 65 kids in order for the Guatemalan government to authorize us as an official private school. And I went out and beat the bushes and got finally 65 kids to come to our school.
Wow.
And so today we've grown. God has blessed. People have seen the work that we've been able to do with the children in these 44 years. And we're now, I'm going to say, it changes daily. You know how schools can be, but 1,300 and something children at our school. We're the largest school in the area.
Wow.
God has blessed. I'm really amazing. Yes.
Yeah. And so, Chiqui, you're helping a lot with the school, and what are you doing with it?
Well, my mom was giving me the opportunity to be at school and be with the teachers and be with the kids and try to help her. And we have grown so much. We're now 1,380 kids from kindergarten to fifth. We call fifth there. And then they graduate from fifth and then they go to college, to university. And so, every morning we pray with them. Every once a month we have a service with them. We try to give the word to them every day.
Wow.
Wow. So you say 5th grade, so we would think that would be elementary and high school is what you're saying. So 5th grade would actually be like a senior in high school, 12th grade.
We have kindergarten through 6th grade in the morning. In the afternoon, the children come who are in junior high. I'm going to say it in term. Yes, exactly. We have junior high and high school.
Okay.
And right now, as a matter of fact, we're working on we want to open on the weekends because, many children aren't able to finish up their education. We're talking junior high and high school. And they kind of have to wait till they grow up and, are able to work and then return to school. So it's important. We've seen the need to open up a weekend learning center as well. And of course, we have the buildings to do it and the teachers to do it. So we're just now working with a law firm who is getting permission from the government to open up a weekend school as well for older children.
That's great.
Young adults.
Is that because they have to work during the week and they can't go to school?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, the opportunity to be and all week, all days there.
Right.
They would come on weekends.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's really great. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you came to Christ.
I do love to tell this story, truly. My husband Herman and I, when we went to live in Guatemala in '68, my youngest daughter was 2 years old, and the other girls were 5 and 6. And we were unsaved. And my husband, who was from Guatemala, Herman Ubico, always his idea. We met here in the States and married and had children and lived for about 8 years here in the States. And then, well, we felt he wanted to go back to his country, Guatemala, which I'm sure most of the undocumented people here in the United States come with the idea to work and make a nest egg and then go back to their countries. So anyways, we moved back to Guatemala from Chicago. We were living in Chicago at the time, and moved into a small colonial there in Guatemala City. And, I remember it was in December when we left Chicago. There was snow.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And I was so just amazed and loved Guatemala, and put the girls in a school there in the city, and we started a life here. But as God had it planned, it worked out. I didn't speak Spanish. And walking around with the stroller and around the colonial that we lived in, I met Roberta Rovenstein, who was a missionary. She and her husband, Tim, were working there in Guatemala, and I made friends with Roberta. And I would go in the afternoon to her house and sit around and drink coffee, and she would share with me about the Lord. And that's where I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior. And then later on, I got pregnant with my first son. And so Hermancito, was born there in Guatemala City. And by that time, Herman, my husband, had accepted Christ as a Savior. And, the rest is kind of history. We were attending a church called El Calvario in Guatemala City. And we met up with some boot campers from Liberty Bible College.
Really?
And we were told about Liberty Bible College, and my husband was like, we're going back to the States, I want to go to school. And so we packed our 5 kids at that time into a Volkswagen bus and drove up here in December. And I'm from New England, so, what do I know about Florida? We had just sandals on our feet and, little sweaters on the kids. And let me tell you, I believe it was like December 18th. And it was cold as anything. And we drove into the old church over on 86 or something, the Liberty Church. And they were just getting out of service. It was in the afternoon on Sunday. And we were received with such love. And it all started there. Ken Summerall accepted him into Liberty by. It was small at that. We're talking how many years ago, It was 73 actually, when we came up here to go to Liberty Bible College, and here we are today.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's how I got saved.
So the missionaries that you made friends with, where were they originally from?
Actually, they're from the Midwest. We still have a wonderful relationship. As a matter of fact, they're the ones who have supplied our kids at school with laptops.
Oh, wow.
Roberta's brother is principal in some high school in California, and every year they change their laptops.
Wow.
And so Roberta and Tim have gone to pick them up all these used, but lightly used, and have brought them down to us in Guatemala. Our kids have use of personal laptops, and the teachers as well,
That is awesome.
because of Tim and Roberta. And they're still missionaries in Mexico.
In Mexico.
Very cool.
Tim and Roberta Rovenstein.
Rovenstein. Now, how did you start? You said you started a feeding program and a kindergarten first. That's how you first got started.
Yes.
How did that come to be? Because
Well, we had already started several churches in the area, my husband, and had like a small Bible school for the men at the base church that we had there at our home in San Juan Ostuncalco. And so more or less it was people who were coming to the church, their little children, and mainly they were, and to this very day, we live in an area of indigenous Indian people. And so most of the children were children of people who were either studying, their fathers were studying there at the Bible Institute that my husband had started, and or just members of the church that we had. It was a pretty good sized church. At the time, the area was still very Catholic, and I think there was just one or two other evangelical churches in the area. So we were like the third. So anyways, we started with the little kids. You know, I would come. The malnutrition was rampant, especially in those days, and it was a very poor area, which is not so anymore. God has blessed that village, let me tell you, really. So anyways, I had Sunday school for the kids anyways, and so many of the little ones from the Sunday school started coming to me during the week. Sometimes their mothers would work, or, hey, they just wanted them to have lunch, somebody else feed them lunch other than, probably just whatever they had in the house that day for lunch.
Yeah. Well, would you like to talk a little bit about Chiqui's story and how he came to you?
Yeah, I really would, because that to me has really been a miracle, and especially, I think it's so important that Chiqui is part of us because he is Mom Indian. And I would say basically the majority of the kids that come to our school, probably we're talking 90% of our children are Mom Indian children. Well, I had recently become a widow, and we had already started the school, as a matter of fact, but we were still involved with some of the people of the church, even though after Herman died, the church did not continue. I had decided to turn over the churches that had been built during that time to the pastors that my husband had working there with their native people. And anyways, his mom and dad were very young parents. They had a first child, and when Chiqui was born, he was born with cleft lip and palate. Exactly, I was thinking in Spanish, paladar hundido. And so when Chiqui was born, they really didn't know what to do with him, because he could not. They were Mom Indians, and they would just naturally give breast milk to the child, not so much bottles. And so he hadn't eaten. He was 2 days old. He hadn't eaten. Wow. And one afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, his father and the grandmother came to us with this bundle wrapped up in a big sheet and said to me, "Please, won't you take our son, because he's 2 days old and hasn't been able to eat. We don't know what to do with him." So I was like, my golly. My kids, were all excited, a baby, and we were looking at this little piece of, that's why we call him Chiqui, because he was just a little chicky big thing. And anyways, I was like, yeah, sure. As a matter of fact, I had helped another two families with similar situations with children. Not that they came and lived with me, but I had gotten information on what to do, where they could go to finally be operated on. And so I kind of had a reputation of that kind of help that I had given to other people. And so anyways, I mean, would I not have said yes? So anyways, I took him with the idea, well, you know, we're going to feed him. The kids ran out that afternoon and went to the market and got bottles and formula and some clothes because he came with just a little shirt on and wrapped up in this huge, great big sheet. And, well, we put some clothes on him and fed him that night with an eyedropper. And for several days we went on with an eyedropper feeding, but he was a hungry little guy. And I so recall that first night after we dressed him and got some diapers and wrapped him up in some warm clothing and fed him. And he went right to sleep and slept. He never, you know how moms with new babies are like, oh my gosh, you're waking up at all hours. Never. Like he slept great that first night and every night since then. He's been the best guy. And, you know, an interesting thing, so many people said to me at that time, oh my gosh, you know, you did such a great thing taking Chiqui in. But, you know, I always felt in my heart that that little guy was going to be a blessing to me. And I'll tell you what, you know, I have 5 children of my own. I took Chiqui and also another Guatemalan child too, whom all obviously are grown up now. But I always felt that he was going to be a blessing for me. And truly he has been. Wonderful, wonderful son I have. Yeah, I do. Really? And actually, I've raised a grandchild too. So 8. Yeah, yeah. And put them all through school. Chiqui graduated as a lawyer, has a law degree.
Very cool.
My other son that I as well took in, he was older than Chiqui, wasn't a baby, but he's a military officer in Guatemala, Guatemala to the state. A major. He's a major in the Guatemalan Army. Yes. Let me just say this. I think it's, you know, so important. As I expressed before, we have a large indigenous population in our school. And Chiqui speaks the Indian dialect, Mom.
Oh, wow.
English and Spanish. And I think it's so important that a national person from Guatemala and sometimes, you know, obviously I don't look Guatemalan, you know. So you know, the people can relate so well with Chiqui.
I'm there at school every day.
All day.
And yeah, I'm the director. I run the school. I have another directors. We take decisions together because they study education, so they help me a lot. My mom and I take decisions for the school, and we have like 50 teachers.
Wow.
It's a big one. It's big. You know,
It's a lot to manage.
Incredible. So Chiqui, you are involved then with the running of the school kind of on a day-to-day basis?
the other directors have gone to the university for teaching degrees, where Chiqui has law. Yes.
So are you currently becoming a lawyer, or you already are?
I already are a lawyer.
You already are. What kind of law do you do?
Like go to court or do paperwork, work for houses.
Okay. Wow. How do you have time to do that when you're at the school every day?
Well, people come there with me and I'm in school and they know me and they just come and ask for me.
He's actually quite a celebrity there.
Ooh.
So people come to me to talk about school, talk about they need.
Problem that they have.
So you're very busy.
Yeah.
So they seek you out. That's great.
Well, I would love to hear a little bit about the Mom tribe. Is that the name? Mom. How do you spell that?
M-A-M.
M-A-M. Okay. And
Isn't easy.
yeah, that is easy. So, and you speak the dialect. Is there a name for that, or is it just
Well, the name is Mom.
The
okay?
name of the dialect is Mom.
Could you tell us a little bit about that group of people? Like what is their culture like? Is it different from the rest of Guatemala or?
Well, in Guatemala, there's like 22 dialects.
Wow.
Indian dialects.
It's not different. The culture are the same.
But the indigenous people, not just the Mom where we live, but I feel that they are very proud of their culture. And the women, for instance, and in some of the indigenous groups as well, the men use typical clothing. Every area has a particular, I'll say skirt, it's called corte, and a blouse, huipil, indicating what group they belong to, both pattern and color, yes. And just to mention one thing that, I think years ago, the Ladinos kind of tried to, make the indigenous people use more clothes. I won't say normal, but their type of clothes. But now it's the indigenous people are very proud of their culture. And even at school, a lot of private schools don't make the kids use a uniform. And we also have a uniform, but the girls can choose because that's so important. It's their identity.
Yeah. Wow.
Do you have any crazy missionary stories? You must have a couple, having been.
Probably a few.
Well, I think the story about, how Chiqui came into our lives, it was so crazy at first, but, God has plans for all of our lives. And, how he came into our family, and truly we just loved him. So he was, I think I had recently become widow. Other people might have looked at my situation and said, my God, you surely don't need another child. But he became my baby, and filled a part in my life that was empty. And the little guy has always been there. And as my older children grew up, moved away, or went to school in other parts of Guatemala, he was always there with me. And you asked the question, where does he live? Well, he lives right next door to me. We share a yard.
Wow, that's awesome.
He and his lovely wife, and Sebastian Bebe, who is my little grandson, and we love him to death.
I'd like to go back a little bit. I'd love to hear more about deciding to go back to the mission field after you lost your husband. I just think that's just such a huge leap of faith, and you really you were called to the mission field and you didn't let that stop you. Would you talk a little bit more about that? I feel like that would really encourage some people.
We had moved to Guatemala after it was extremely hard. I loved Pensacola, from the north, but as a young Christian, when we came back from Guatemala, when we moved here to Pensacola, I had never been in a evangelical Christian atmosphere or church as Liberty Church was and is to this day. And I just felt it was very hard for me to move back to Guatemala, it truly was, because when we lived there, when we first went there, I always call that time my 4 years on the desert. We lived in a very isolated part of Guatemala, out on a small farm. no running water or light.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, oh my gosh, I was so happy to come to Pensacola, and our first house here was a trailer. And yesterday, Chiqui, I was telling him about the trailer, and he said, Mom, but you lived in, to him, a trailer is like, it was a beautiful home. It had running water, it had light, and heat, and air conditioning. So I was so happy here, and then to have to go back. The only thing I said to my husband was not to the farm, because we still had the farm. So anyways, we went back, and they had, here at Globe, they had suggested that we work with a certain church there in Guatemala City, which was called El Calvario. And so we went back with that idea. We knew the pastor. We had a relationship with that pastor of that church. It was a very large church in Guatemala City. So he sent us to the second largest city in Guatemala, which is Quetzaltenango, which is actually, we live in a village outside of Quetzaltenango, because when we returned in 1976, there was a huge earthquake in Guatemala and killed many people, like over 20,000 people died, and houses were destroyed. So in Quetzaltenango, where we were supposed to go and start a church, hadn't been affected very much by this earthquake. So any houses that were available for rent were rented, because many people lost their houses, and so they came to this area to, regroup. And that's how we actually ended up. The lady that was helping us look for a place to rent owned this great big old 200-year-old house on a fairly large property, piece of land, like a whole city block. Wow. And she kept saying to me, well, I have this house in an aldea, a pueblo. And I was like, finally, I don't want to know anything about pueblos. I want to live in the city. So anyways, finally in desperation, because it's like 4-hour drive from Guatemala City to Quetzaltenango. I was tired of lugging my kids back and forth. We were staying with a relative of my husband in Guatemala City. And so I finally said to the woman, listen, does it have water and light? She said yes. I said, well, let's go and take a look at it. And the moment we drove up there, I knew that was where we were going to be.
Are you still there today?
I am. Wow. I am. Not in the same house, because we made room for the school. We've constructed because the school has grown so much. So actually we live in the same town, but it's just out. We're out in the woods again, but it does have water and light.
Yay.
Right, Chick?
Well, did you experience any other kind of culture shock moving from Chicago to Guatemala? I mean, no running water and no light. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. Sometimes I think, I can't imagine how Herman said, well, we'll be able to have ponies for the kids, and we'll be out in the country. And I was like, oh my goodness, how wonderful. I think I was like 26. You know how you are when you're 26.
And how many kids did you have at that time?
I had the 3 girls. Well, and actually, when we moved out, I had just given birth to the baby. I was pregnant when I got to Guatemala. He was born in Guatemala City, and so I had 4. But then I had another child while we were living out there, the 4 years that we lived out there on the desert, because literally we never had water. We had to go to little streams to carry water back to the house.
I cannot
and
imagine
no electricity. Yeah, I had come to Guatemala. We moved there and had lived in the city. We had bought a refrigerator and stove, and well, we cooked wood fire, and I traded my beautiful new refrigerator for one run by gas. Wow. I mean, not gas propane, no, gas it was liquid gas that you had to pour in. It was, I'll tell you what, it was culture shock. Well, we finally got a horse, but the horse was served to lug all the dirty clothes down to the river so we could wash the clothes in the river and then pack it up back on the top of the horse and come back up to
So you lived a rough life. You lived like the locals then.
I truly did, yeah, out there.
And
yeah.
you cooked over a fire?
A little man came and built me like a little stove area in the kitchen of adobe blocks. And that's what we cooked on. And he actually made like a little oven here. I remember I could bake bread in there. It was, yeah, that's why I call my 4 years on the desert. You know, I was a new Christian. But you know, interesting thing, this happened after, when I had the school already, probably we're talking 30 years ago. We took some of our teachers, well, we took our group of teachers to Guatemala City to an area, a place that had like swimming pools and what?
Like a recreation.
Recreation center, which was out there by where we had lived on the farm. We got down off the bus with the teachers and whatever, and this is the river. The river that ran through this was where I washed the clothes. So anyways, there were local people that worked there at this, and several of them were like, "Are you doing your Judy?"
They knew you.
The area that we lived in was called the Planeta, which means the planet. I mean, imagine how
Oh my goodness.
You gave us Sunday school classes on your porch there on that very typical house that we had there. Had a great big veranda in front, and I would give the kids, we would have church services there, and Sunday I would take the kids and give them, yeah. They remembered me.
They were adults now, remember?
They were adults, so.
That's incredible.
That is
You
amazing.
told us about Jesus Christ, yeah. Well, I mean, how could they? I look a little bit different from everybody. That was something that I really never will forget. I was so touched by that.
Yeah, how cool to be able
It made
to,
my day.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to see them again and know that they remember and. Yeah.
And Judy, you spent your whole life in that same, I say your whole life, but your whole time in Guatemala in that same area? You didn't move from one place to another?
Oh, we did. Yeah. I never wanted to go back to the Planeta. We did have dogs and chickens and piggies and a horse, but
The laundry horse.
oh, and my laundry horse. Yeah, the laundry horse. Literally, I swear.
So that was kind of just by chance that these people that you stopped, this recreation park that you went to is not where you live now.
Oh, no.
Wow,
no,
that's
at all.
incredible.
Not at all. And now we live up more towards the Mexican border and on the Pacific side, because Guatemala has Atlantic and Pacific. And so we're more on the Pacific side now, but we're 10,000 feet above sea level in the mountains of Guatemala. So where we lived before, there were no indigenous people. It was all Ladinos.
It's very interesting.
I enjoy living among the indigenous people.
It's nice.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of Judy Hernandez. Join us next time as we listen to how her ministry has impacted the lives of those around her and all her crazy missionary stories.
Thank you guys so much for listening to Crazy Missionary Stories. If you are listening on Spotify, don't forget to follow us and give us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and of course, share it with your friends. Thank you guys for listening. See you next time.